this man, Abdul Uzza, this young person, with all of his zeal and enthusiasm to the Prophet ﷺ, he falls in the Prophet's feet. Instead of, he could have hugged him, could have kissed his forehead. He falls in his feet and he starts kissing his feet and starts crying. And he tells him his whole story. So, Prophet of Allah, this happened and this happened and that happened. The Prophet of Allah, as he's telling the story, the Prophet starts crying. That a person could love me this much. He says, what's your name? He said, my name is Abdul Uzza. He said, no, from now on, your name is Abdullah. I have changed your name to Abdullah. He would always stay with the Prophet. A few months later, the Prophet was going to Tabuk and he was traveling with him. He was making dua, oh Allah, I want to go to Tabuk and I want to become shaheed there. In a way that my body is cut into pieces and I'm resurrected from the min butun as-siba', from the stomachs of beasts that eat me. Then I come in front of you, Allah, on the day of judgment, and this is what I've done for you. The Prophet raised his hands. He says, oh Allah, save his body and protect his body min suyufil kuffar, from the swords of the disbelievers. Meaning he's making dua that he doesn't become shaheed. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, I'm making such a beautiful dua and you're making a dua that the swords of the non-believers don't touch my body? The Prophet said to him, Abdullah, don't you know? Man kharaja min baytihi fi sabilillah fa asaba al-humma fa mata fa huwa shaheed. Then he explained 7 different shuhada. He said, oh Abdullah, don't you know a person who goes in the path of Allah, gets sick, dies in that sickness, he's also shaheed? You don't have to be killed to be shaheed. He said, okay, yes. So Allah give you shahada, but please, oh Allah, protect his body. He loved him. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari and Abdullah al-Mas'ud, they're both narrators of this hadith. They say that one night in Tabuk, we were in our tent. I got up to see where the Prophet was in his tent. He wasn't there. So I followed a light. There was a light somewhere. So I followed that. I seen 2 people standing on top of a grave, digging the grave. And I seen somebody inside the grave. I come closer and I see that next on top of the grave was Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma. And in the grave was the Prophet ﷺ making the grave flat. And he says, now waluni sahibakum, now give me your companion. And that person who passed away was Abdullah. The Prophet grabs him, he hugs him, and he puts him in the grave. And then he says to the Abu Bakr and Umar, he said, I stayed in the grave لَعَلَّهُ يَكُونُ بَرْدًا وَسَلَامًا عَلَىٰ أَخِيكُمْ, so it could become cool for your brother and peaceful for your brother. Then he gets up and he says, Allahumma inni ushiduka anni anhu radin fardi anhu. He says, oh Allah, I was pleased with him, satisfied with him, happy with him. Oh Allah, you be happy with him as well. And he made this dua over and over again. Abdullah bin Mas'ud, seeing this, would say the same thing that any of you would say, and I would for sure say if I was there. He said, Ya laytani kuntu makana. He said, I wish I was that person who died. Abu Bakr and Umar digging the grave, the Prophet lowering the person in the grave, the Prophet getting out and making dua for that person. This was the result of his yearning and love for the Prophet ﷺ, that he got this status in this world, and his departure from this world was like this. This was the status of that. The Prophet ﷺ says in Hadith al-Qudsi, Man ahabba liqa Allah, ahabba Allahu liqa'ahu. A person who yearns to meet Allah, Allah yearns to meet that person as well.